Even with the new stimulus bill, President-elect Joe Biden will inherit a fragile economy brought on by the pandemic when he takes office in January. Millions of Americans remain unemployed, and businesses across the nation are struggling to stay afloat. In response to the latest job report on Friday, Mr. Biden said the U.S. is in the midst of, quote, one of the worst economic and job crises in modern history. That slowdown is expected to continue as COVID-19 cases continue to spike and governments impose new rounds of restrictions. Now, for more on this, I want to bring in Daniel Zhao. He's a senior economist at Glassdoor. And Daniel, this is the fifth month in a row employers cut back on their hiring. Why are we seeing such a significant slowdown now?
Well, I think that the elephant in the room is the pandemic. The virus is in the driver's seat, and there's just no way to have a full economic recovery until we have the public health crisis under control. It's pretty obvious that when you look at the industry by industry numbers, that because retail and leisure and hospitality have been so hard hit, that the pandemic is really what's driving this economic crisis.
What are some of the industries that took the biggest hit and why?
Well, retail and leisure and hospitality, right off the bat, saw pretty dramatic decelerations in jobs growth in November, with retail even losing jobs on a seasonally adjusted basis. And that's largely because of the pandemic, not just because states are reimposing public health restrictions, but also because consumers are hesitant to actually go out and spend money if the pandemic makes it unsafe to do so.
We're in the middle of the holiday shopping season. Traditionally, you would see a bump in unemployment when people, get that extra work. E-commerce is gaining traction, people buying online. What impact do you expect retail shopping over the holidays to have on the economy?
Yeah, retail spending has actually held up surprisingly well over the pandemic. It's been buoyed by government relief earlier on in the crisis, and we're actually seeing indicators that even though there's a pandemic going on, the holidays aren't canceled. We're going to see spending, but it's just going to be shifted online. When we look at job openings data on Glassdoor, we actually see that job openings for e-commerce related roles have surged around 150% year over year. And that's really an indicator that spending is going to look different this year, but it's still going to happen.
We're seeing momentum growing on Capitol Hill over a new stimulus proposal. $908 billion bipartisan relief plan would provide about $300 a week to those who are unemployed, as well as help some small businesses. How important could this package be to helping the economy get back on track? Or is this just enough to keep it from collapsing?
Well, I think it's actually even more critical that we have aid now than it's ever been during the recovery, because we know that a vaccine is on the horizon. We can see the finish line in sight, and there's no point in shooting ourselves in the foot when we are just yards away. 6 months seems like a fairly short amount of time to wait for a vaccine, but that's not necessarily true for Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. And that's why it's all the more critical that we actually have some congressional action before the holidays.
Here's the billion-dollar question. At the pace things are going right now, when can we possibly expect the economy and employment to bounce back to pre-pandemic levels?
Well, again, the virus is in the driver's seat. That really controls the economic trajectory of the recovery. But at November's pace of job growth, it would take us until 2024 to actually return to pre-crisis levels. And that's an exceptionally long amount of time. That being said, if we are able to get the pandemic under control, some economic indicators have actually been pretty positive and point to a potentially faster recovery than we've seen after similarly sized economic crises, just to balance out the pessimism with a dose of optimism.
Daniel, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.